Good morning. It's Friday, February 4th, 2022, and welcome to Triggered. I'm Cory Morgan. This is the Western Standard's live daily show. We're going to be coming to you every day, Monday to Friday, with a number of guests, interaction, and live updates as we will today, coming from reporters we have around the province when issues are unfolding. And the issues are unfolding hard and heavy these days. Hey, Fred, I see somebody in the audience already there making a comment. So yes, the comments are welcome. Bring them on in. I won't necessarily bring them all into the scroll or pass them all along to guests, but you certainly put it out there. We like it to be as interactive as possible. And but, you know, be polite, be somewhat civil. We can be a little angry. I'm angry all the time. Hey, Stephen. And we just don't have to be at each other's throats. We're here to be triggered, but reasonably so. Happy Friday, Ben. So I'm going to get on to what's got me triggered today. But, you know, first I want to trigger all of those folks on the left because they deserve it and they drive me bananas. Oh, by the way, I want to mention our guests today. They're going to be Renaud Brossard of the Canadian Taxpayers Federation. We're going to talk about the Quebec backing down on their idea for a vaccination tax. That's some good news. But of course, there's still lots of other taxation things to talk about. I'm going to have Western Standard columnist Dave Makichuk. He writes on international affairs and things quite often. He also wrote on his thoughts on bringing the protests to an end, and it got some people good and stirred up and triggered, as we would say. But it's good to discuss lots of points of views on what's breaking and what's huge right now in the news. So Dave's going to join me a little later. Our own James Finkbeiner is still down in Coutts. He's still watching things develop. That scene is just changing constantly down there. It's hard to keep up with. So it's important to have somebody there in person so we can get these updates and know what's happening down there. Now, I'm going to quickly talk about, I'm going to get on to why I'm triggered actually in a moment. I'm just scrolling through this long teleprompter, but I do write this stuff. I just need some prompting to read it. Now, I'm going to trigger the liberals who are out there, all 10 who are watching this show. Honk, honk. Keep that going, guys. Now, what I want to talk about, this isn't normal. It's not a new normal right now. It's not even an old normal. What we're living in right now is abnormal. And it has to end. Lots of things get me worked up and make the vein pulse in the side of my head. That's why this show's called Triggered. And it would be rather dull if I was docile about issues. So there's few things that get me worked up faster, though, than when some vacuous twit shrugs and declares today as being the new normal. It isn't normal. It isn't normal to have lost the ability to smile at people due to being smothered with a mask that covers a third of our face. Or to scowl at them, as I typically do. We are facially expressive people, and we shouldn't be covering them up without it being dire need, and it isn't. It isn't normal for post-secondary students to constantly be pushed into online learning with every spike in COVID-19 infections. Students still pay full tuition for this new normal form of education, by the way. If indeed this is the new normal, we might as well close the universities and do all future education through YouTube videos. I shudder to think that a future doctor doing a procedure on me may have gotten some or all of their education online. And hey, let's get those professors on there. They can make their money through YouTube ad revenue because, boy, they sure get paid a lot for doing learning from home, don't they? And then getting into the other kids in school, it isn't normal for children in K-12 to be distanced from each other and masked under threats of expulsion for non-compliance. There was a vulgar Quebec TV production that even prompted children to speak on how they think unvaccinated children should be put in jail. This disgusting campaign of fear and division can never be normal. It isn't normal for people to attend funerals and weddings through Zoom. We're social creatures and develop large ceremonies around these life events for a good reason. We bond and share these experiences with each other at these gatherings, and we can't lose them. And there's no substituting for them. It isn't normal for businesses to ride a roller coaster of openings and closings on the whim of the state, nor is it normal for people to have to present proof of their personal medical status in order to enter these businesses. Taverns and pubs have been hubs of social gatherings for thousands of years. I mean, they've been since medieval times. People meet and interact with their neighbors. They develop relationships and bond at these establishments. I used to own a pub in a rural area. That was the place where people got to see each other where they wouldn't otherwise. This is now impossible when it's literally illegal for a person to leave their table and socialize with people at another table, all while being masked, of course. So don't you dare tell me this is normal. It isn't normal to be separated from friends and family members for months or even years at a time due to international travel restrictions that to date have had little to no impact in stopping the spread of COVID-19. Jane and I have grandchildren in Australia we haven't seen in years, and it's causing incredible pressure on Jane and Maria and to family in general. And we're just one of thousands of families, millions of families around the world having their life stunted by these restrictions. It's not normal. It isn't normal for society to split itself over the medical status of their compatriots. We literally have a prime minister calling unvaccinated people racists and extremists. How the hell could we ever consider this sort of political division normal? I'm exhausted with fools trying to paint all these restrictions as minor inconveniences. People are going bankrupt. Families are being permanently ruptured, and opioid addictions are going through the roof. There's nothing harmless about their sick concept of what should be a new normal. The only acceptable state of normalcy has to be a state of personal freedom. Our new normal should only include a knowledge and acceptance that COVID-19 is one among many communicable diseases that will always be with us, and we learn to live with it. We no longer keep shutting down our world in a futile attempt to bring it to an end. It hasn't worked. It won't work, and the damage caused by these actions is piling up. Canadians are starting to stand up and push back, and it's beautiful to behold. Thousands, supported by millions, are refusing to accept our current status as being any kind of normal. I want to see this attitude spread faster than Omicron did. Some things will likely never be the same, but don't you dare for a second try to tell me this is some kind of new normal. I won't accept it, nor should anybody else. The only normal we should be pursuing is the one we lived under in 2019 and nothing less. New normal? Not for a second. And anybody trying to convince me of such will be quickly invited to kiss my ass. That's what's got me triggered today. And again, the word for the day, let's have one, endemic. You know what that means? It means it's there, it remains there, and we deal with it. We protect the vulnerable, and we let the 99.6% of the world get on living. So remember, it's not new normal. If you think otherwise, kiss my ass. Okay, on that note, we'll get on to somebody who's a little more normal, and that's our news editor, Dave Naylor, who's covering the other stories breaking out there in the world of Canada. Let's bring him in. Hey, Dave, how you doing?
I'm doing well, Cory. Not too many people call me normal,
though. Well, around this newsroom, actually, you stand out as being more stable than some of us anyways.
Well, I don't know about that, but hey, TGIF, and hopefully a good weekend for everybody.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I guess we'll just get right into the news then, shall we?
Sure, yeah, I guess I didn't give a good introduction. Dave comes daily. I assume all you guys have been regular viewers, but we've gained so many new ones too. I should explain the routine that this show's been building. We check in with Dave. Dave's working his butt off in the newsroom with Mel, Eva, Amber. We got people all over, and they are writing the stuff up there. I check in with Dave to see what's recently been topping our news and what is coming up. Sorry for that piss poor intro. I was still just thinking about people kissing my ass, Dave.
Don't worry, Cory. I'll kick you in the shins when you come back to the newsroom. But
all right.
Yeah, where to begin today? Why don't we start with truckers? You remember that CBC story last week, Cory, where they tried to blame Vladimir Putin and the Kremlin for organizing the trucker protest? Well, CBC has admitted today they may have got it wrong. Do you think? So we've got a story up on that. The mainstream media, if you listen to them, you would think that the city of Ottawa is in a state of anarchy right now. Fires burning and looting going on. But as we all know, that is not the truth. The mainstream media has got it wrong again. In fact, Ottawa police crime statistics show that since the protest started, street crime has actually dropped. So it sounds like the protesters are doing a good job of policing themselves. Truckers, as you know, you'll be having James Finkbeiner on the show at some point. They don't seem to know whether they're coming or going at the border. Yesterday, they decided that they were going to leave and move the blockade to Edmonton, and then they changed their minds about 2 hours after they initially said they were going. So they're still trying to figure out what they're doing down there. And our legislature reporter in Edmonton, Amber, she'll be down at the grounds on the ledge tomorrow for all the excitement that will no doubt happen. Other stories we've got, Cory. If you drove home last night, you probably had a bit of a shock when you saw the price for a liter of gasoline. It's now averaging $1.40 in Alberta, and even higher in Calgary. So the Canadian Taxpayers Federation has issued a plea this morning for the governments to hey, maybe take a cut of their taxes and drop certain taxes on taxes on. They actually tax the tax. So there's a plea for the government to stop doing that. You remember the Bowdoin classroom from yesterday, Cory? This was a group of about a dozen kids that decided they were no longer going to wear masks, so they were put away and locked down into the school's boot room and not allowed to leave for the day, and basically had their reading, writing, and arithmetic sitting in the boardroom, in the boot room. I'm sorry. That caused some consternation with parents who dashed to the school to see what was going on. The RCMP were actually called. A trucker apparently showed up and was blaring his horn in support. So the school went into lockdown, and they have decided that it's too volatile a situation to have classes today. So today and Monday, all the kids will be at home learning off their computer. Mills just got off the phone with school authorities, so we'll have what they've got to say up on the site shortly. Liberals are talking about their bill that they're bringing in again to censor the internet. They basically say, yeah, we know Canadians don't like it, but we're going to do it anyways. So that's the Liberals for you. And Jason Kenney last night confirming the worst kept secret in the province that vaccine mandates will soon be gone. And I guess the cabinet's going to be meeting on Monday to figure out exactly when they're going to drop it. So it looks like vaccine passports may be coming to an end sooner than later in the province, Cory. So that's it for me. You got any big weekend plans?
Me? Nah, probably just rounding up more guests for next week and being the wiener I am, watching news as hard as I can and trying to dodge chores around the house and the chicken coop that Jane will surely be assigning me.
Yeah, well, unlike last weekend, make sure you stay away from mainstream media.
Yeah, I'll see what I can do. All right, thanks, Dave. I know you guys are just working your fingers off to keep the news up there, so I'll let you get back to it, and we'll talk to you later.
Thanks, Cory.
Okay, and I am going to go to James, who's down in Coutts pretty shortly here. Just a quick reminder to everybody, as Dave was saying, there is so much news going on out there. I mean, we are just scrambling to keep up with it right now, just provincial, federal, even international on all fronts. It's just been crazy. But I mean, we are a news organization. We're on it. We're a small one. We're alternative. And I think, I'm a little biased, doing far better than the mainstream media when it brings this stuff to you. So, I mean, be sure, if you haven't already, though, take out a subscription with us. That's how we keep rolling. We don't get tax dollars like some of those other outlets. We aren't asking for it. They aren't offering it. We rely on you guys to subscribe. For $10 a month, full access to all of the articles, columns, the works. You get straight in there. You get a free trial for 2 weeks. You can check it out, see if it's worth your $10. 95% of people, once they try it out, they stay on. They keep the deal because it is less than a newspaper subscription. You are getting all that content, and it's just breaking, it's news. Keep checking into the site. And again, as well, here we break stuff on here. Mel comes on with live reports. James comes on. Subscribe on YouTube, Facebook, Rumble. We broadcast all of them. That way you'll see the alerts when they come up. Okay, I'm going to bring James in because we got a couple of things to cover. I've only got about 5 minutes with him, but he's going to come back again a little later in the show. And let's see what's going on down in Coutts. Hey, James, how you doing?
Cory, welcome back to our Southern Alberta offices.
Yeah, you've been entrenched for quite some time there.
We're at a week now. Tomorrow's going to be a long day, and Sunday's coming next. So,
well, you'll have to change the address on your driver's license soon. So, I mean, one thing I want to hit real fast. We'll get a quick update. Like I said, we got about 5 minutes. Paul Brent, by the way, follows me on Twitter, so I have messaged him. He hasn't gotten back to me. We've heard a lot of rumors. There were rumors of the helicopter, which sound like, unfortunately, guys, I know you want it to be true, but it doesn't sound like it was true. And now there's rumors that he's going to be doing a concert at the side of the blockades. I don't know. It's in the realm of rumor, but we haven't heard anything about it. What have you heard on that one?
I tell you what, if I see Paul Brent, I will be the first one to let everyone know. But okay. I have asked absolutely everybody here. Nobody can confirm that Paul Brent was here There was a helicopter in the area. I know some people got a picture with a helicopter. We've asked for confirmation that Paul Brandt's in that picture. We have not had any confirmation that Paul Brandt is in that picture. And nobody has actually physically laid eyes on Paul Brandt.
Okay, and we will report on. I mean, hey, we'd love to see him down there, but for now, it still kind of seems to remain in the realm of rumor. So a lot of things are fluid, James. The last night it sounded like some were leaving, some weren't leaving. They changed their minds. Some are heading to Edmonton. Some are remaining blockaded. See what you can pack into 4 minutes to let us know what's happening before we can expand further later.
And only 4 minutes. Wow.
Yes.
Yesterday, that situation just developed. It started developing slowly over the course of the afternoon, and then it just developed very, very rapidly. A larger group of the committee that's I wouldn't say making decisions, but essentially working as a group to communicate with the whole of the protest. They came together. They had a discussion. They thought, we're starting to overstay our welcome here. Some of the locals, more of the locals, were beginning to get frustrated. They were having a little bit of issues, but they did start getting food and fuel and everything else in here. But they decided, we've made a point here. We've made an impact. How can we continue to make an impact without hurting the people that we work for? They don't want to hurt the locals. They don't want to hurt businesses. They don't want to hurt the cattle industry. They don't want to hurt agriculture producers. So they didn't want to overstay their welcome. So they thought, you know what? There's a large group that is now going to start to convoy to Edmonton. Let's go with them. Let's take our message from here and what we've done here and take it to Edmonton with us. And they had that decision. They had a vote. They called the RCMP over. They told the RCMP what they had planned to do. And then they wrote up a press release. They wrote up the press release. They gave me the press release. They gave us some interviews. I talked to a few of them. They gave us their side of the story. Mel reached out. She interviewed one of the guys, and we put the story out. After they left here, they went back to the bigger group, and they had a couple more discussions. And Pastor Art Pulowski, he somehow snuck into the protest area past the police checkpoints, and he delivered an impassioned sermon. And when he was done his sermon, it was about 25 minutes long. The group as a whole had mostly changed their mind. They decided to hold the line, and that was their message after that. Actually, their specific message was #hold the line. Now, some of the guys did not agree with that. Some of the protesters that have been here since day one, they still thought they would be better to take their message to Edmonton, try to meet with some MLAs, and go have coffee with Kenny. So this morning, 3 of the protesters, they actually went to go join the convoy leaving from Lethbridge. And they're saying, we're not leaving the line, we're expanding the line. We're taking the line that we drew here, and we're taking that line all the way to Edmonton, and they want everyone to join in with them. And I'm just working on some video from this morning. Mel's working on updating a story for that, and we'll have some video of those trucks pulling out this morning and taking their message to Edmonton.
Great. So yeah, watch for that on all of the channels you guys are watching on there. James is going to be uploading some videos that you can see, straight out what's happening. And I know some people get upset with what they see, or they it's hard when rumors are coming and going. That's why we have someone on the ground to just try and clarify as much as we can. This is fluid. It's developing. It sounds like there was unity and it quickly split, unfortunately. And yeah, some are heading north and some are remaining. So we'll bring a longer update. I won't have James nearly so squeezed for time when I bring him back a little bit later. There's just so much to cover and do. This gives you, I guess, a teaser on knowing what he can expand upon when that time comes. So thanks, James, and we'll see you in a little while here to get a more expanded update on what's going on out there. Thanks to Mr. Pulowski.
Yeah, for sure, Cory. Look forward to it.
All right, James. So yes, that's our James Finkbeiner, who has, as he said, been down at the border for a week now. It's quite a dedicated guy, and it's been something else. There was so much more we could have covered in that short time, but I've just got a packed show with guests, and he will be back to talk some more on this. Before I go to Renaud Brossard from Quebec. I'm going to quickly mention another one of our sponsors here, and that's the Canada Shooting Sports Association. These guys, CSSA-CILA.org. They are, as their name says, they're a shooting sports association. Check them out. You can take out a membership with them. If you're a firearms owner, whatever way you are responsibly, safely, legally enjoying a firearm, whether it's a collector, a target shooter, or a hunter, these are the guys to join so you can network with other firearms owners and keep organized to keep safely using these great pieces of property out there. And they're standing up for it. The Shooting Sports Association, they have all sorts of resources, by the way, for upcoming shows and how to safely utilize firearms and things. But they're also behind legal challenges against the government because they are trying to take away your right and ability to use a firearm. And you know what? It's like we're seeing with everything else. They will take our rights if we don't push back. So these guys are helping you push back. Check them out. Canada Shooting Sports Association. If you value your firearms, you will want to take out a membership with them. CSSA-CILA.org. Okay, I've held them up a little bit there. We've got Renaud from Quebec with the Canadian Taxpayers Federation because we've had a pretty big development in Quebec. So we'll bring Renaud in here, and or am I slaughtering the pronunciation of his name? He's going to let me know in a moment. Oh, I think you may be muted there, Renaud.
You're right. Yeah, sorry. And no worries. You got the name right. How are you?
Oh, okay. Very good. Thanks. No, thanks for coming back to the show. The last time we had you on here, and as I said, you're the Quebec director of the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, we were talking about the proposal of a tax being imposed upon people who have chosen not to be vaccinated. And now I've got you back, at least kind of for some good news. It sounds like the Premier of Quebec has relented and they're not going to impose that tax after all.
Absolutely. And I got to say, it's not very often in my job that I get to report on some good news. Not a lot of good news for taxpayers these days, but this is one good one. Premier Legault had some sober second thoughts and admitted that his proposal for the vaccine tax was wrong, that it was going to be too divisive, it was not going to have as much of an effect as he anticipated, and decided to scrap it on Wednesday.
Great. Well, that's moving along. I mean, what sort of pressures do you think came about to make him change his mind on this? Was there legal experts, or they just, we know how politicians work. They probably did a lot of polling and discovered perhaps that, oh boy, we're going to take a lot of flack for this. Like, why do you think they decided to change their mind?
I think there's a variety of reasons. Of course, there were some experts against it. The opposition did some work against it. Even the Department of Finance, when they looked at it, saw that wouldn't be that effective. But I really think the people that are, those that are to thank for this are the people. It was people sending in messages, was people telling their politicians that this was a step too far. And this was both the unvaccinated, but also the vaccinated. There was a very, very low support compared to what the Premier thought for that measure. And the people understood, rightfully so, that this was a thin end of the wedge. If we bring in some health taxes, if we allow the revenue agencies to access our private medical data, they're going to start dreaming up of new ways to use our private medical data to tax us. So people understood that, people fought back, and the Premier backed down.
Yeah, well, it definitely flew in the face, I think, of the concept of universal coverage for people in healthcare as well. From the taxation front, I believe you talked a bit about some of the numbers at the time, too. I mean, even if they brought in this tax and they brought in, and taxed the number of people, roughly what they were talking about for the unvaccinated, it really would barely make a dent in the healthcare expenses of the province anyways.
Oh, absolutely. And the number I was using back then was $1,000. We did get a little bit more specific numbers. They were thinking of modulating it based on revenue, so between $100 and $800. And basically what they did is their models, they looked at it, only about half of the unvaccinated would actually have had the tax. And they looked at what would have been the impact on getting more people vaccinated. And they just thought, this is going to be a whole lot of hassle and it's not worth the cost. There's not going to be that many extra people getting vaccinated because of the tax. And so once again, thankfully, they backed down on that bad proposal.
Yeah, well, and as you said, let's give a thumbs up to the people who spoke up and pushed back. When government throws things out there, when they pitch things, it doesn't mean it's graven in stone yet. We can stand up, and you know what? If enough of us are standing up, they will actually back off. We're seeing kind of a lot of that across Canada. They dig their heels in on points of pride sometimes, but when the writing's on the wall, they'll find an excuse and they will get out. So that's a good development. Another area you wanted to talk about in Quebec, though, and it's something for a lot of our Western listeners, people forget there are oil and gas reserves in Quebec. There are resources out there. And Quebec has chosen, though, not to develop or produce from these. What have you guys been looking at on the front there? Is there room to get them to remove those bans or things such as that?
Actually, now what they're trying to do is to make it a complete and permanent ban on any oil and gas development. So they just introduced a bill. It was introduced yesterday, I believe, to ban any oil and gas exploration or development in the entire province of Quebec. And let me be very clear. This is not an environmental policy. This is an ideological policy. This will not reduce the amount of barrels of oil that Quebec needs. This will not move everybody from heating with natural gas to heating with electricity. This is very much an ideological battle against the production of oil and gas in Quebec, which, quite frankly, doesn't really make sense. We know that there's a lot of natural gas resources in Quebec. There's a very, very rich basin in the St. Lawrence Valley that we could exploit, that we could, get some revenue out of and get some good paying jobs in the province. And unfortunately, the government's choosing to turn its back on that.
Yeah, and I mean, from both, it's just odious from an environmental and a revenue generating point of view. I mean, when you have a resource that can be responsibly developed and you're refusing to, it's just ridiculous. And I mean, liquid natural gas, this is one of the areas too. I'm not talking about the oil sands in Alberta or anything that can be spilled even or anything like that. This is something that's getting big all around the world. We are seeing producing countries setting up liquid natural gas terminals and exporting gas to great effect. And they're sending it to a lot of countries that are burning coal otherwise. They're burning wood even, or animal dung in some places. Mm-hmm. Why should we deprive them of a cleaner source of energy, such as liquid natural gas, when they are stuck on more primitive forms? It's actually doing the opposite of making the environment any better. It's setting them back.
Well, absolutely. And when you look at it, even the renewables, a lot of countries that are using solar or wind, well, solar and wind are intermittent sources of power, and we still need to have power. So a lot of those countries are reopening either coal or natural gas or other kind of plants. So using resources like natural gas is a whole lot greener. But I think another point is when you look at it, there's a lot of support in Quebec for resource development. The latest poll we saw was from back in October. There was 66% of Quebecers in favor of developing local natural gas resources in the province. There was about 20% undecided. So really the fraction of people that is against developing these resources is very small. Unfortunately, that's not what it looks like when you look at the National Assembly in Quebec. Out of 125 MNAs, I think there's 124 that say they're against it. So you see there's a clear disconnect between what the people want and what the politicians think people want.
Yeah, well, and as Mark Bass, one of our commenters, pointing out hydropower for the wind. Well, yeah, and they got a massive hydro energy resources in Quebec, but it doesn't mean you can't produce other things. Even if you're not domestically consuming it, you can export. I mean, it's how you actually bring revenue and money and jobs into your region and into your province. I mean, nobody's saying stop developing hydropower or nuclear in some areas or anything else. We can supplement and bring in more. It's just such absurd and expensive virtue signaling by trying to ban the production of these resources when you have them literally under your very feet and you're consuming them.
Absolutely. And, there's also the fact that having this kind of domestic production allows us to have the kind of environmental regulations that we believe needs to be around the development of these resources. Now, especially on natural gas, well, both on petroleum and natural gas, we rely on imports. Petroleum, thankfully now it's a mix of Canadian and US. We're done with importing from Saudi Arabia, so that's a good thing. But when it comes to natural gas, we're still importing from a lot of other places. There's still a very, very big need for natural gas in Quebec. Actually, right before the pandemic, when there was the rail blockades, Quebec was actually at risk of running out of propane. And that was a major issue for our agricultural sector, for our health sector. So to have this kind of domestic production that could rely us with clean burning natural gas, but at the same time give us those jobs and that tax revenue would have made sense. But to say that we're going to ban it outright, we're not even going to try to put the right regulations around it or whatever else. Once again, it just screams ideology rather than actual environmental policy.
Yeah, well, we've got so many areas of insecurity in a lot of ways right now, whether it's economic or social, unfortunately, in a lot of ways, but also energy insecurity. And it's not brought up often enough. I mean, the more local resources you have for generation, the safer you are in an adverse weather event or something like that. If there is another ice storm or if there are supply chain challenges, the chances are a lot better that you'll be able to get power and services, though, to people on the ground, because we're a winter country. We can die if we don't heat our houses. And again, it's absurd to have that resource sitting next to us and not developing it even for domestic needs, if not for export.
It is, and there's also a cost to it because what we've had before was a moratorium on oil and gas development for the last 10 years. Like, it started in 2011. No one could do anything, but the rights were still sold. The rights were still belonged to certain companies. What the government is doing now is going to expropriate those companies of those rights. It's going to try and compensate them with $100 million worth of taxpayers' money. So not only are we missing out on revenue, we're also going to pay a decent amount of money, and that is not that's also not including the amount of money that some of the crown corporations like Investissement Quebec here have invested in some of the junior oil and gas companies in Quebec.
Yeah, you're actually paying money to keep it in the ground. I mean, what an odd notion. Yet, nobody can be more odd with our money than government ideologues, unfortunately. I'll kind of pivot. This wasn't something we mentioned before, but I mean, is part of the motivation, or could you talk a bit about that, is equalization. Now, non-renewable resources have always, because of the fact that provinces, when Quebec or when Newfoundland was heavily producing, suddenly they were no longer eligible for larger amounts of equalization. Because Alberta has such a large amount of this, we are never qualifying for equalization. But Quebec's hydroelectric has always been exempted from it. Is it also the fact that they know that suddenly it will cut into their local equalization money if they start producing and getting money out of petrochemical resources?
I think it's not directly because of that, but I think it's indirectly related. Let me explain the point. It's just what it does to have these equalization payments is it means that whenever the government makes a bad decision against economic development, it actually doesn't have to pay the full price, because it does get that compensation from other provinces that do the right stuff, like Saskatchewan, Alberta. So when we do get that compensation, it just reduces the cost of bad policy and encourages the government to actually adopt those bad policies. Because there's a cost to a government to even adopting a good policy. It's going to get some blowback. There's a lot of people that still don't want to see oil and gas development in Quebec. Like we've seen from surveys that while they're not a majority, they exist. But now the government can not only not get that kind of blowback from the people against those developments, but they don't have to cover the full cost, because they're losing some revenue, but part of it gets compensated by equalization. So indirectly, I think that is definitely part of the answer. It's also something we've seen in other provinces. One of the arguments why a couple of years ago, why New Brunswick was not developing natural gas was because it would have cost a little bit too much in lost equalization revenues. So it is very much something that government officials think about.
Yeah, well, and I mean, it's a backstop. It's one more thing. It's sort of like the CERB payments for some people, I guess, who had a lesser motivation in life and don't mind sitting back for a while. They felt more willing to quit a job or take on making money in the creative arts if they knew they could actually count on getting their bills paid in the background by CERB and such, which wasn't the actual intention of that program.
Absolutely. And at least from an equalization perspective, there's one good thing about Legault. Is that while he believes the program should be kept, unfortunately, he still wants to progressively get Quebec off of equalization. He has put a goal for within 15 years, trying to get those equalization payments down to zero. I hope it's going to be faster than that. But at least just the fact that there's a Quebec premier that wants to get off of this economic dependency on the rest of the country is definitely welcome news.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as a point of pride, and I know regionalistically when we're throwing shots at each other, and I'm guilty of it quite often, but, a lot of Quebecers would be more than happy to say, no, we're not relying on welfare payments from other parts of the country. We are self-sustaining and we're paying our bills. Now leave us alone.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I think you got it right. It's regionalism. We all have pride in our various parts of the country. Quebecers definitely have pride in Quebec. Every single Albertan I've met has a lot of pride about being an Albertan for good reason. So that there's a point of pride, but also there's even a point from just a development perspective. If we don't rely on equalization payments, it means our people are richer, they have more money in their pockets, their lives are better. And I think that's what everyone's striving for.
Great. Well, thanks for coming in to talk to us a bit about that. Again, it's good to get a little bit of good news, maybe a little bit of bad news at the same time, but it's always ongoing, and it's a battle of push and pull. And you guys at the Taxpayers Federation are good at standing up for, of course, the rights of citizens. Taxes take a big bite out of our living. So, we need somebody to defend us from government getting overly zealous, as they typically do with it. Where can we find more information on what you're up to and what you're doing out there?
Always feel free to go on taxpayer.com to keep aware of our campaigns, or to follow us on Facebook, the Canadian Taxpayers Federation. We're very active there. And once again, thanks for having me, Cory. It's been an absolute pleasure as always.
Great. Well, thank you. And I'm certain we'll be talking again soon down the road. The taxation issues never go away. Okay, so yeah, that was Renaud Brossard from Quebec. And again, it's that reminder that there's still common sense people in Quebec. We get upset with them, we get on their case and things like that. But there are actually a lot of conservatives in Quebec. The Quebec Conservative Party, actually, if you look it up, I interviewed his leader, the leader of it. And I'm forgetting his name. So, but they're actually second, I think, to the NDP in Quebec right now, provincially, and rising. They're doing quite well out there. Check them out. We can reason with enough Quebecers. Maybe we can stop being at each other's throats a bit regionally and do better for ourselves. I mean, there's a lot of common ground between Albertans and Quebec. I think we've just gone about things a lot differently. But one thing we certainly have in common is we don't like the federal government. The Quebecers have no more love for Ottawa than Albertans do. And the more we can talk between each other and get Ottawa out of our hair and allow provincial jurisdiction to come in, I think we would get out of each other's regional hair quite a bit more. So I'm going to stop for a second, and we're going to run an ad for one of our sponsors, Algodex. It's a local company talking about digital currencies again, and they're really growing fast. So check out Algodex, and I'll be right back.
Algodex is owned by Algonaut. This is great new technology just coming online now in the digital currency world. Algodex is a great way for you to use the digital currency Algorand in your day-to-day transactions. Can you imagine a world where we don't have to buy a cup of coffee using the federal dollar? And you don't even have to use the American federal dollar. You don't have to use the euro or the pound sterling. You can use real money, digital currencies that are not at the beck and call of governments and inflation. The Algodex is making digital currencies usable in a day-to-day basis.
Hey there, welcome back. Thanks for listening to our sponsor. Again, for those who subscribe to us, that helps, gives us the numbers, helps draw in sponsors for more local companies, and it's just capitalism in its beautiful form. That way we can pay for more reporters, upgrade our gear to avoid those technical difficulties. Yesterday we had some website issues, for example. They got ironed out, but it's an ongoing thing. So thank you all you existing subscribers, and to those who haven't already, please take out a subscription, check it out. It's well worth it. So we got a little time before we get to my next guest, and that's all right. There's lots to talk about. James, as I said, is down on the border. I know I saw, I think it was Cheryl brought up a comment about the word of it. And James, we talked off air about it. We'll confirm a little more of that later, about the possibility of a bunch of horses being brought down there. And that might be where Paul Brandt appears. I mean, it is the area where a lot of people do own a lot of horses. So that's very much a possibility if we're going to see it anywhere. I don't know. I see James kind of in the background, though. If he feels like popping in and talk a little more, I got the time. He can give me a wave. If not, okay, he's nodding. We're abusing poor James down there. We're just working the hell out of him. But come on, it's well worth it. We need that live voice. So come on in, James. How you doing?
I'm here working on a couple of projects anyways, Cory. So I'm strapped in the office for a couple of hours before I get out there and start talking to the protesters again and continuing on my work with that story. But as for the horses, there actually is a Facebook group from a company. They do have professional wranglers that are supposed to be coming down with it. Now, I haven't reached out to that group yet. That was something that was on my list to do this afternoon, to find out the details and actually see what's going on. But yeah, there's just a ton of social media rumors. There are so many social media groups, Telegram groups, Twitter. So it really is hard to figure out what's fact and what's fiction right now. So there could be horses, there may not be horses. it appears it's likely there will be horses and possibly wagons as well. So I don't know yet, but that is something that we're working on to find out for today.
Yeah, well, it gives all that Yellowstone imagery. I mean, you're right on the Montana border. We've got these cowboys, we got these horses, and we've got ranchers and upset people. I mean, we just want to make sure it always remains peaceful. I mean, from what I can envision, the horse owners I know, they would take it out for a nice big symbolic ride. It'll make for some interesting optics. But how many or what happens? Well, I guess time will tell. Now that the weather's relenting a little on you, I think it's pretty possible.
Yeah, there's a nice Chinook rolling through. It's nice and warm again, and yeah, we're hearing that some of the protesters from the Milk River protest site are going to be riding into the Coutts site on horseback and delivering supplies in with them. Now, there has been a call out for some supplies, but for the most part, they're good on food. What I'm hearing now is that they're actually concerned with the Chinook coming through, that they may have an excess of food and they may not be able to keep it cool anymore. So that's something that's kind of developing right now. I believe, I've even heard a rumor that Adamson's Barbecue is going to be doing a barbecue tomorrow. I haven't confirmed that either. So, I mean, we've got horses, we've got barbecue, we've got Paul Brandt. One of the things that I seen though was that Albertans can't seem to do anything without a beer in their hand, and I have to be honest, Cory, there is no drinking here. This has been a completely dry event. I have not seen a single person have a sip of alcohol. I have not seen any drugs or anything here. These are mostly very religious blue collar working men, and it's been more about the protest than having a party.
Well, you know, then that's a good thing to note from the ground, because, yeah, you have a whole lot of people camped, gathered, and hanging about. And as we know, I've got my share of experience with it. We don't get any smarter for the more we drink. Often, actually, some of our dumbest notions suddenly become brilliant in our minds, and we do foolish things. And with a large amount of people gathered in something that still has potential tension and potential danger. I mean, if things go off the rails, some people really could get hurt if we're not careful. So it's good to hear, you know, it's a jubilant gathering, but it's not an alcohol-fueled party or anything at all like that.
No, I mean, the first weekend had the feel of a music festival, but I didn't see anybody drinking that first weekend. I didn't see a lot of horsing around. That's sorry for the bad pun there.
I was going to go on about barbecuing horses later, so that's okay.
It's you know, it's been reasonable, and like even with the RCMP talking to the group last night, you know, they said the situation is so unique because cowboys, farmers, and truckers and police get along. One of the RCMP was telling a story about a time he broke down in the middle of nowhere, and a trucker stopped and helped him. And he said, now we're in this situation where, you know, we're frenemies, and I think that's actually been a good thing, because it's de-escalated a lot of tense situations, and I don't think anybody feels that there is a imminent threat of some sort of SWAT invasion anymore. It's more, you guys ask and we'll make some concessions, and you guys make some concessions, and let's get through this together. Let's stay focused on getting the mandates repealed. But you know, there have been some concerns coming out of the Milk River site. Some of the landowners are concerned that the lane that's open down there isn't quite wide enough. That there's not enough room to get through. I know some of the landowners in the area are having a meeting right now. I'm hoping with one of my sources is going to be following up with me right after that. But you know, the Coutts group, the original group of protesters, have been very good at communicating to the Milk River group, you know, this is what we're negotiating up here. Please abide by it. Don't do anything down there that can jeopardize what we've done up here. And that's been good, and I think that message like needs to go out. I think anybody that is coming into this area should be aware that like this is a serious protest. This is a serious thing. There's chances for anything to get out of control if anything goes wrong. So please don't drink and drive. Don't bring drugs into the site. Keep things calm. Keep things peaceful. Last night we were told that they were having a hockey game in the middle of the highway. Now, obviously, they're supposed to be keeping the highway open. As of 7 o'clock this morning, I've seen plenty of commercial vehicles going back and forth across the border. I even seen some personal vehicles coming across the border. I seen a motorhome come north into Canada. And the guys at Coutts really want to make sure that the guys down at Milk River are doing exactly what they're doing up here and working with the police. I seen earlier some posts on Facebook. They were thanking the RCMP. They were thanking the sheriffs and thanking there's conservation officers here and the Lethbridge Municipal Police Force. They said, you know, you guys have been great. You've worked with us. You're not working. They're not working against them. They're not working for them. They're keeping things safe and they're containing the situation. And they really want that message to go out to the people coming into the area.
Great. And as I've said before, it's protesting done right. I mean, there's always potential for it to go wrong, but there's a lot of effort to keep this positive. I was going to ask you about that because I keep asking through the updates through the week. So there is some traffic getting through the border. Like, that's the big pinch point. I think that's what will raise the tensions quickly and dramatically, though, is if they stop it up altogether and don't let anybody through, then it forces the hand of the police and the government. So there's still some traffic getting through then.
Yeah. This morning I seen 3 cattle liners loaded up, headed south. There was a couple of trucks coming north as well. Actually, some oversized loads. So if the oversized loads, I believe the one that I was talking to at the scale this morning, they were just checking to make sure that they could actually fit down the highway, and they left the scale. So I'm taking that as they found a route either around the protest site at Milk River or the police checkpoint at Milk River, and there was 2 oversized loads that came north into Canada this morning. So, you know, there has been still some rumors that the highway shut down, and I'm just going to say, if oversized loads are headed north into Canada, there's got to be enough room for traffic and emergency vehicles to get through.
Oh, and that's good to know. And again, we're seeing a lot of smearing of protesters and a lot of misinformation. Some's perhaps real, you know, at times, but we need to constantly clarify that. Like, everybody's being communal. Nobody down there wants to stop emergency vehicles from getting into Coutts or starving people from Coutts or keeping them from getting to work and back. I think it's been pretty cooperative with the locals to make sure that doesn't happen.
Yeah, for sure. I've even seen posts on some of the convoy groups saying, "Don't you dare bring any hate symbols here. We are not those kind of people. This is not what that's about. This is about the mandates, and we're going to stay focused on the mandates. We're not sending mixed messages. It's one clear message." And they've been good with meeting and communicating with the locals, but they do have to be aware that their welcome is wearing out. You know, some of the landowners are getting concerned about damage to their land and the potential of an influx of people over the weekend and the situation getting out of control. So they've said to people, you know, make sure you stay in control, manage yourself, manage your own personal responsibility in this situation. Come, be peaceful, speak your mind, protest, but don't damage anything. Don't ruin the farmers' fields. Don't wreck the roads. Don't harass the locals. Don't go into their businesses and fight with them about masking and vaccine passports. I've heard that. You know, some of them do see that as simple civil disobedience, but they do have to remember that these businesses have been put at massive risk, massive fines from AHS. We've seen AHS go after businesses before that have participated in civil disobedience, but it's a small area. Coutts is a very small village. Milk River is a small town. You know, they have limited resources, limited restaurants. So, you know, they're asking for respect for the locals and they're asking for everybody to stay peaceful and on message.
Great. Well, thanks for the update. We'll come back to you a little later in the show here to get the final one before the weekend hits us here and talk a little more about it and see if you've heard anything after my guest there, David Makichuk, who I'm going to have. So thanks again for checking in with us, James, and we'll keep an eye on her.
Yeah, actually, you know what? I'm hoping that today is not another day where I get handed a note right towards the end of the show and have to go running off to some crazy event. I'm kind of enjoying the peaceful, relaxed atmosphere that's happening around here right now.
Yeah, well, we'll take it as it comes. And yes, as things break, we just got to flow with it as best we can. So let's hope you can get a breather and catch up on a bit of stuff. And then you can go out and catch whatever's going wild a little later.
Sounds good. Thanks, Cory.
Okay, thanks, James. And it sounds like somebody's having some issues with the YouTube getting a feed. Other viewers seem to be doing all right. Keep in mind, if you search us out on Rumble, actually, Western Standard on Rumble, you'll find the live feed on there. Facebook is actually where the majority of our viewers watch us on these live feeds as they go. You can join any of those and catch them as they go. And make sure to subscribe to those, whatever feed you prefer, whether it's or subscribe to all of them and share them. This is how we bypass the mainstream media and their wretched coverage of things. We don't need to rely on them for information anymore. We can do better, but you will get alerted. If you've got a subscription to YouTube and you allow the alerts, as much as they can be annoying, every dumb video that pops up gives you an alert. But if we break in, because we've done that before, if things are breaking out in Milk River and James is covering it, or something goes crazy in the Edmonton and Amber's covering it, or anything like that, you'll get that alert and you'll be able to see live in real time what is going on. That's what we bring to you. So I'm going to bring our next guest, Dave Makichuk. He's a columnist with the Western Standard. He writes a prolific one at that. He writes a lot of, quite often on international issues and things such as that. And he's got, of course, a long storied history with Sun News. So let's bring him into the show here and have a chat. Hey, Dave, how's it going?
Very good. Very good. How are you today?
Good. You mentioned you were at quite 100% this morning. I hope you're feeling a little better.
No, just I am actually feeling better now. So yeah, but I'm fine. I'm fine. Nothing serious.
Okay. So, some of our tensions, I guess you could say, on the international front militarily are almost as wild as all the crazed protests sprouting up all over North America or Canada right now. Just the one more recent column I just wanted to quickly start with, we had a lot to talk about, was that, what was it, an F-35 that crashed into the South China Sea, and then they were scrambling to go out and try and recover it before the others could? It sounds like something out of a movie almost.
It is. It's like Hunt for Red October, only it's not Admiral Ramius, Sean Connery, that they're after. They're after probably one of the most advanced, it is the most advanced piece of military weapon in the world today. It's a computer with wings. It can communicate through multi-domains, which is air, land, sea, cyber, and space as well. It can communicate through all these areas instantaneously. It can jam you. You can't see it. You may be able to track it coming in, but you're not going to be able to see it. And it'll hit you so hard you won't know what hit you. It can carry weapons, like a dozen different kinds of weapons, missiles, bombs, smart bombs, and nobody has anything like this except for our allies, of course. There's a naval version, which is this version. I believe it was a C. It was actually a C, the F-35C. They were trying to land. It was just a typical landing on the USS Vinson, an aircraft carrier in the South China Sea, and something went terribly wrong, and it crashed. The pilot ejected, and 6 or 7 people were injured on the ground. Happy to say they've all been airlifted to hospital and are doing okay. Nobody was killed. But as you can see from the photo, that's an actual photo which the Air Force has confirmed to be real. So you can see the seat is missing. You can see the canopy is missing. And, it makes me think, had the pilot just kept his cool, he might have just been able to walk out on that wing and had a drink with his pals that night in the bar.
Well, certainly he personally had a code brown over the whole affair in general, but it's good that he got out of it. As they say, any crash you can walk away from is a good one out of that sort of thing.
Exactly.
So that much is good, and it kind of brings back to what we talked about the last time you were on. We're really getting those rumbles of the Cold War coming back to us again, those memories. We've got China as a player. We got Russia as a player. They're getting increasingly hostile with neighboring nations. They're looking expansionist. And we're seeing a military buildup. As the Americans keep training, that's how these accidents are happening too. It's all kind of posturing at this point, but it could turn into something much more.
It could, and well, and the scary thing is the Chinese Russian alignment. That's quite scary because they both want to end American hegemony, which is what they call it. They want to end that, and if they go into Ukraine, just if we talk about Ukraine for a second, if they do go into Ukraine, I from everything I'm seeing from professionals and from people in the Pentagon, from analysts, this is going to be, at least in the short term, a win-win for Russia and China. This will be a win-win because sending a few thousand troops to Poland, which is what they're doing now. They're sending a few thousand troops to Poland and Romania. And this is on top of the 8,500 troops that are on alert. They're sending a few thousand troops in. So does that project fear to you or anybody? It doesn't. It doesn't project fear. It's going to make us look weak. And both countries stand to gain, and China stands to gain. Obviously, Putin was empowered or emboldened, let's say emboldened, by the U.S. pullout from Afghanistan. It was a disaster, an absolute disaster. And what does that say? And then we switch over to Russia, which has done a remarkable job in Syria. They've actually restored Assad, who, let's not talk about that guy, what that guy's about. But anyway, they restored him to power, and they want to expand that. They're also making inroads with Turkey, selling them weapons. They're also using the same game plan with Egypt, and the big picture is that Putin wants to restore that Cold War strength of Russia, Mother Russia. Get out of Eastern Europe. Get the hell out. We don't want you in there. They want to restore that. And the problem is they've backed each other into a bloody corner, and they can't back down. Neither side is backing down. The Americans are not going to leave Eastern Europe. They're not. And Russia is not going to back down. And, and then the Russian populace has been bombarded with propaganda for years and decades. And they believe that NATO and America is the aggressor. So it's like, what do you do now? There's nothing you can do. You can't, you can't back down. They're going to have to go in. And if they do, I think in the short term, and then you have allies, so-called allies, okay, Israel and Germany. Germany says, well, we can't send, I'm sorry, but we cannot allow any, Baltic countries to send weapons we've sold Baltic countries to sell to Ukraine because of ethical issues. Well, for God's sake, Germany has one of the biggest arms industries in the world, and they're selling arms to anybody, regardless of ethics. But suddenly, we have ethnic issues with Ukraine. We can't do that. And Israel, to placate Russia, will not sell any weapons or allow any of their weapons to be sold to Ukraine as well. And this is a country that receives billions upon billions of dollars from the United States. So there you go. It's a mess. It's an absolute mess.
It is. Throughout human history, we've it's countless the millions of people that have died over political leadership on points of pride. Whether from medieval wars to contemporary ones, it never just seems to change. They invest their political capital into it, and they're willing to sacrifice soldiers on the ground rather than back off. It's an ugly situation building up over there, and it's hard to see where the vent is. How are we going to find a way to avoid a larger conflict? Because expansionist states never stop with the first one they take. Neville Chamberlain figured that out pretty darn fast back in the end of the 30s, and the rest of the world's going to realize if Russia gets away with taking Ukraine, they're not going to stop there.
No, and you know as well as I do that they'll throw sanctions on there, but the Russians will find a way around it. They will find a way around it. Germany is not going to shut down that pipeline that they need. They need that. And again, and they consider that none of America's business, which maybe it's not. I don't know. But I mean, you're not just gonna, you got a few Baltic countries, good on them for supporting Ukraine, sending in weapons. And I just heard today that Poland is also sending in artillery and shells, and so that's great. That's great for them to do that. So at least they're getting support from a few countries who are showing some courage and saying, yeah, we don't want to be a Russian satellite country again. We don't want to go back to the Cold War. But it seems like we are heading back to that. And that's got to be a huge concern. I mean, I don't know about you, but I remember as a kid growing up in small town, Southern Ontario, we had a big horn on a post next to our house. We had a house behind a garage, and it's just, area in Ontario, blue collar area of Ontario. And every once in a while that horn would go off. And we all knew what that was. Like we all knew, hang on just a second. I got to squirt my cat because he's meowing.
Yeah.
Sorry, Bert, be quiet. Anyway, as I said, that horn went off. It meant Third World War. It meant we were all going to die. We were all going to be cinders. We were going to be destroyed. And I don't want it to go back to that. Dear God, no. Where we are hiding under our desks and going like this and getting ready for a nuclear attack. Because, I mean, we all know one American submarine, one, could destroy every major city in China. One. And that's just one. And they have like 30 or 40 of them. Plus, every other weapon known to man. And now China is boosting their nuclear weapons across the board. Russia, too, I understand, is now looking at modernizing their nuclear weapons. So where the hell are we headed? Is this the madness of it all? The madness of it all. It's like Dr. Strangelove all over again. We just haven't learned a damn thing. We haven't. And I've been to Washington. I've been to the Army AUSA show, and I've seen how huge the military industry is. And man, it can't be stopped. It's just going to keep going.
Yeah, and just I guess for our younger viewers, because it's a must watch since you brought it up. Dr. Strangelove. It's a Kubrick classic with Peter Sellers and Slim Pickens, and it's a dark parody. But it was so the reason it was a hit in its time was because it was so realistic on how much idiocy and intractability we have among our superpowers, and how the capability for an error leading to a troll world destruction is real. It's not impossible.
Yeah, no, it's not. I mean, we came close at the Cuban Missile Crisis. That was very close. But we had two guys by the name of John Kennedy and Bobby Kennedy, and they were looking out for us. I mean, when JFK walked out of the meeting with Curtis LeMay, he was devastated by the madness of the Joint Chiefs. They wanted to use nuclear weapons on Cuba, and he just thought these guys were nuts and that he had to stop them. So they went around them. And they spoke directly to representatives at the Russian embassy. And thankfully, apparently there was one point where a submarine commander, a Russian submarine commander, was going to respond to an American ship and decided not to. I can't remember if it was a Russian or I think it was a Russian sub, and he had nuclear missiles on board. And thank God he didn't. Otherwise, we wouldn't be sitting here talking. And that's what we have to avoid here. We have to have calmer, cooler heads. But I mean, Putin is, again, he's pushing hard. He's pushing really hard. And what do you do when two sides have backed themselves into a corner? And now you've probably heard the reports of a fake attack. They're going to use that as a fake false flag in order to go into Ukraine. Make it look like there was that the Ukrainian troops did something terrible, that they attacked and there were atrocities, and they did terrible things to children and blah 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 blah. This is what this report came out saying, that there was going to be a video with actors and actual corpses and videos of American or whatever drones and everything, a false flag to try and spark this attack. And that's like, but at least we're getting it out, and we're telling the world, don't believe this shit, don't believe it, because it's just not. So I don't know. We don't seem to be on the same wavelength as Putin. We don't seem to be. He has his concerns with NATO. He has his concerns, and maybe we can alleviate some of those concerns. But basically, we're at a very, very dangerous time in the world. 2022, February. This is a very dangerous time for the entire world, because if they go in, it's going to change the whole world.
Well, yeah, and this gets back to, again, those who forget history. I think that most of the generation now has just forgotten how serious the Cold War was, how living under a threat, really thinking this could happen any moment was there. I mean, it was even worse prior to my generation. I was on the tail end of it, but I'm going to hold out some optimism, because a lot of things have changed too, though. As I think I'd mentioned in the last time we talked, I'd gone to the Soviet Union while it was still under communism, and I toured. And they searched my bags looking for cassette tapes and books and everything, because they wanted to keep outside information from coming in. And they still have a lot of propaganda there now. They still try to tell, as you said, the citizens feel that NATO is the aggressor. But there are many more ways now for them to seek a broader information. Like they can't cork the outside information as effectively as they did 30, 40, 50 years ago. Maybe that can help ease some of the pressure, because they're not going to have the broad public support they did as a communist state that didn't allow any information into itself.
Well, you would think, one would think so. One would think so with all the information that's out there. Now, just a small confession. I have a lady friend who's Russian, and she lives in Beirut, but she's from Eastern Ukraine. And we get in arguments all the time, because she blames everything on America and the CIA. The America did this, or the CIA did that. But then this poor lady has had years and decades of propaganda thrown at her. So it's pretty tough to crack that. I mean, I've tried to explain to her, no, this is not true. You're being brainwashed. And she says to me, no, you are being brainwashed. So yeah. I don't know where do you go from there, just one thing I wanted to mention about the false flag. Nobody is reporting this, nobody. But what's interesting here is that America, I don't know if you remember the Gulf of Tonkin incident off the coast of Vietnam.
Somebody just mentioned it now, yeah.
A long time ago. Well, that was a false flag way. It was a complete lie. It didn't happen. It was about Vietnamese attacking American ships and so on and so forth. Apparently, it didn't happen. There's no proof. But they used it. They threw it out there as propaganda, as, back in the day, America could do no wrong. And they threw it out there, and it basically led America into the Vietnam War. They needed that false flag to go in. They wanted, the bigger picture was, of course, stopping the communism in Southeast Asia. But they use that. So it's been done before, and it's been done by the United States.
Yeah, we can't rule anything out. So, well, thanks for joining me. And, I just want to remind everybody that Dave, the Western Standard covers a lot of things and broad and particularly Western Canadian issues, but we also have lots of columns and stories on everything up to and including international issues. And Dave watches that like a hawk and writes on it very regularly. So thanks for coming to expand a bit on your recent columns. I'm certain you've got more to come as we watch this develop.
Yes, for sure. And just one last parting story that the media pretty much ignored was the Houthi missile and drone attack on Abu Dhabi airport. So if you're going to Abu Dhabi for a holiday and you want to go in some of those beautiful big buildings, watch out now, because the Houthis can now reach it. They've got Iranian weapons, and they can strike the United Arab Emirates, and that's got everybody in the Middle East spooked. Anyway, let me part you with that story.
Okay, a little more fear, but all the same, we'll keep watching and hoping it gets better. Thanks, Dave. We'll talk again soon.
Thanks, man. Take care. Stay safe.
You bet. Thanks. Okay, and we're getting some messages from James. I've been watching in the other comment scroll. We're going to cut to him pretty quickly here. I guess there's some things have developed at the Coutts border blockade. Hey there, James. Looks chilly, windy at least.
It's windy, but you know what? For once, it's not cutting directly through my clothes. Yeah, so I was just saying that so far today has been one of those days that nobody's broken into the office and told me that there's developments, but it turns out there has been some developments. I'm going to flip the camera around here right now, but the border, the southbound border into the United States has been blocked again. The protesters have moved the trucks back across the highway, just in the southbound lanes only, and you can see the RCMP have moved back in to monitor the situation. I haven't been able to get inside to talk to any of the organizers yet. I'm hoping to do that here rather quickly. I understand. I was stopped by some locals as I drove over here, and they were telling me that there's some loads of live animals down at the Milk River checkpoint, or either in between the checkpoint and the border crossing. So I'm going to imagine that things are going to get a little bit tense here. I know that there has been some concerns about moving live animals. As you know, we've had some supply chain issues. They're having some issues getting the trains into Canada with corn, and this won't help the situation. Now, I'm trying to get around this here just to see further down the highway here. If you look, there's a service road over there. Now, that service road has been left open, and that service road goes just straight south here, and you can cut back into the border crossing up there. Now, I can't say for sure that was left open so that live animals could move through. There is still a lane open that comes up here. So there is still emergency access to the village of Coutts. There's still bus access to the village of Coutts, but I am being told that the RCMP has since shut down access for people to come south into the village of Coutts now.
Well, that's unfortunately going to lead definitely to some more tension down there. I mean, that's the big sticking point. And there's that concern. I mean, we've heard some people claim it's false, some people claim it's true, that there's been livestock stuck on each side of the border, because it kind of moves both ways down there. It's our only agricultural checkpoint, actually. They can't go to a different crossing. But it's very difficult. I mean, for people who don't know about it, you can't just throw livestock on and keep them in a trailer for long. They have to be let out. They have to be watered. You'll kill them if they're stuck for an extended period of time. So it's very serious if that's happening, and I certainly hope it isn't.
Yeah, we're gonna try to confirm that as soon as we're done here. I'm gonna head back into the saloon. I'm gonna try to get as much information as I can. So make sure you keep an eye on the westernstandardonline.com. I'll be updating Dave and Mel as soon as I can get as much information as I can. I'll be sure to to get some pictures and get some video for everyone, and keep everybody updated on what's happening here in this latest development.
Okay, well, my show will probably be wrapped up before you pop out there again, unless something crazy happens. Let's hope it doesn't. But thanks for the update as things develop. And yeah, we'll look forward to your reports and finding out just what's going on down there, James. Thanks.
Take care, Cory.
All right, so yes, the situation is still fluid. It's still ongoing. The border's open. The border's closed. James has been attending a lot of the meetings in person. They have meetings. They try, I guess you could say, committee in a sense, and leadership. But there's differences in points of view. Some went north. Some stayed down. Now, James doesn't know why, but it appears that some have determined that they want to close the border again, which again will will force the hand of the RCMP eventually. They can't allow that to keep being shut up like that. You can do this protest, but I tell you, you can't stop the border altogether. It forces them. But again, hopefully they open up again soon. You can still hinder it. That's the point of a protest. You want to make sure your message is out there. You want to make it uncomfortable and difficult for the government, but you can't draw a line in the sand and force them to act. It's just not going to end well. Unfortunately, it sounded well, as Shelley was saying, the pastor is the instigator. I don't know. But I'll tell you some things. I know there's some people who like Art Pawlowski. Fine. He does his things. He stands up for some freedoms. He's got the right to be a preacher. He's been wronged in some things, but he's also a very intractable, hot-tempered man. And he doesn't mind getting his butt thrown in jail. But I'm not sure if going down there and trying to work other people up to encourage them to get their butts thrown into jail is a good plan at this point. But he's free to go down, and he's done his thing. I don't think it helped. But that's up to the individuals down there. But when you've got art involved in things, your chances of seeing a reasonable outcome decline very quickly and very dramatically. We do have, we've been talking about that for days. The government is on their heels right now. They are, I think, this is just theory, maybe I'm dead wrong. Even if Trudeau doesn't want to back down, the federal government knows they're under serious pressure right now. They're trying to figure out how they can extricate themselves, what sort of concessions can be done to bring this to an end. And that has been due, though, to the protesters being civil, being good, being effective. They've tried smearing them wrongly, and it's failing, and public support for the government has been dropping over that. This is a story Dave talked about earlier. It was in Blacklock's Reporter. I think we're probably going to cover it in the Standard if we haven't already. But this is a direct quote. It said, the Freedom Convoy blockade at Parliament yesterday completed its 6th day, so this is a little bit back, amid MP claims that lawless truckers were attacking passerbys on the streets of Ottawa. Now, preliminary data showed the police reported street crime actually fell. Yeah, so there we go. Western Standard reported on it. So, yeah, I should have more faith in Dave. I knew he'd have that up there. But just wanted to be sure as I'm talking about. But crime has fallen since the protests began in Ottawa. There's a video I wanted to play. I can't do it. Some of you might have seen it out there. I wish I'd written down a name and where you can find it. It's a TikTok video. It's probably gone to a few other areas. The problem was there was music playing in it that's licensed music, and we'd be in trouble if we ran it during our live feed, because then suddenly we'd be getting a strike against us. But it has the speech Trudeau is giving where he's smearing the people who are demonstrating as terrorists, as extremists, as racists, and all the rest of the garbage. And meanwhile, it's showing all these clips of people dancing, of people being friendly, of people being jubilant, of people being positive. And it's just well worth a watch. Try to search it out. I couldn't throw it on here because, again, as we got this instigation going on. There's an imbecile out there, and I'm going to call him that, a complete imbecile. His name's David Haga. He's a union leader, and he writes for the Tyee, which is a virtual borderline communist publication. I'll say that outright. Very, very hard left-wing. And he wrote a piece recently where he outright was saying that it's time for the military to move in, surround the truckers, and start forcefully removing them. Wow. Yeah, that would really end well, Dave. That's a real good idea. Brilliant. That's how you bring this situation down. We've got a peaceful protest. We've got over 10,000 people more showed up in Ottawa, an incredible low amount. I think perhaps part of what David is upset about is that we're showing how it's done right. If it was 10,000 lefties, they'd probably still be trying to put out the fires from the windows smashed out and the firebombs going into the Starbucks and other businesses around there. And they're upset with this, so maybe they're hoping that they can incite a riot at these things, because that's what would happen if the military tried to move in when you don't need to, and attack these peaceful people protesting out there. And that's how heated things are getting. And some people are pouring gasoline on the fires from both sides, from Art Pawlowski pouring it on his side, and from Dave Haga pouring it on the other. So let's keep cutting through it. Yes, Cheryl's saying the federal government doesn't even want to negotiate. Yeah, I know. They've dug their heels in, Cheryl. But they will feel pressure eventually. I don't think Jason Kenney wanted to negotiate on this whatsoever either. But he's feeling cornered, and that's why his messaging is getting mixed. It's hard for these politicians. That's what I was talking with David Makichuk about. Unfortunately, they make decisions often based on political pride rather than pragmatism. and won't back off in a circumstance when they probably should. And then it escalates and it can get worse. And that's a problem that happens with international diplomacy. And that's what we're happening is with these protests all over the place. So I'm just looking at the messaging coming from James. He's really running around to trying to find out what's happening. He talked to the RCMP. They're saying the same thing as what he's seen. He said everything was quiet, everything was fine. And then out of nowhere, they blocked the border again. He doesn't feel he needs to be cut in for that. No, that's okay. He's going to get more information on what's happening. And he said, have a good weekend, guys. That's to us. I think it's also to you guys, the viewers. He's still going to be around there in person. And that's what's so important. Get there in person. You know, some people, again, I see some commenters saying we've been spreading false information. How? We got a guy live on the ground. He's reporting what he sees. That's what we do. If you don't like the information, there's nothing much I can do about that. You know, sometimes we give messaging you don't want to hear. I'm sorry about that. Actually, I'm not sorry about that. I'm not even a bit sorry about that. We'll go back to that, kiss my ass idea I had earlier with people talking about the new normal. Look, we'll give you the opinions from me. I'm an opinion guy. And we get the news from guys like Dave, guys, people like Mel, people like James, who's out there on the ground. Sometimes the message coming out isn't going to be what you want to hear, but we're giving it as unvarnished and as truthful as we can find. There's some of the difficulties. James has talked about that. We've got 2 blockades on the go. 2. There's one up by Milk River that the RCMP are maintaining, and it's got a whole pile of protesters all around that. And then there's the other one right down by the border at Coutts. And that's the one where James showed us the footage of all. Yeah, let's see pictures. Well, we have, Leanne. We've been putting them constantly. James has been taking the pictures, and we've been given outright live video as it happens. And James showed us live video of the trucks, again, pulled out across the road and blocking the border. We don't know why, but it has happened. So he's going out to try and figure out what happened. And we, of course, will continue to report on every development as it happens. And it's just live. It keeps going. And, we got some, as much as it's not happening fast enough, we're seeing a lot of indications that Premier Kenney, we know he wanted to wait on removing restrictions until it came closer to his leadership date. Politics, politics, politics. But this thing has been blowing up on his butt. He can't sit back. He's backing off. Now they're talking about them perhaps getting lifted right away here, like very quickly, or at least after the weekend. I know some people want it yesterday. I'm among you. But we're seeing a stubborn government moving because of peaceful, rational protests that have been pressuring them and pushing them. Ernie Sue, he was a guest on here before. He's the Calgary Hospitality Association. I was listening to him on the radio this morning when I came in. And he pointed out that too, even the vaccine passport, which has been a hindrance, and it really doesn't seem to show any benefit, and it doesn't, it really makes it more difficult to do business. There's other restrictions in place in the restaurants and bars that are really hurting them. It's kind of as I was talking about my rant before. When you go to the restaurant or bar, often you're going to socialize with people at the next table. You're going there to interact with other people, and they can't do that. These are the restrictions they got in. They've got to close early. They can't stay open as late as normal. They're all last calls at 11. That's 3 hours of revenue at prime time for some of these bars. It's hurting them. These restrictions are hurting them a lot. And maybe we're coming towards the end, though. It's been really positive developments, really good pressure. As some others have pointed out, the American coverage of Canada's protests has been much better than our domestic, wretched mainstream coverage of it. The CBC even, had to do their groveling little backtrack, and they're pretending that they didn't try to claim Russians were behind this, but they were. They were. A Russian, there we go, CBC, oops, we got the Russian story wrong. And Nico is always on it here. So given Canada's support of Ukraine in this current crisis with Russia, I don't know if it's far-fetched to ask, but could there be concern that Russian actors could be continuing to fuel things? And that's she's already presuming that they are. So continuing to fuel things as this protest grows, or perhaps even instigating it from the outside. That was from a CBC news anchor as the protests were going. A peaceful, effective protest, and the instigators are in the mainstream media. And on the other side, again, Art Pawlowski, he's another instigator, and he's on the other side. Most of the people protesting are reasonable, peaceful, positive, and they're getting stuff done. And it's getting seen around the world, and it's fantastic, and I've loved watching it, and I want it to remain that way. So that's why I'm concerned about developments. I'm concerned about movements splitting. I'm concerned about infighting. I'm concerned about them being there too long. As James said, there's a risk they will wear out their welcome if it's too hard on the locals. The locals are putting up with it. It's still a pain in the butt for them. It's not devastating their lives, but it's a big pain in the butt, and they will get sick of it. You know, you get something of a curve with these protests where your support's going up and up and up, but if you go too long, it will drop. And if you lose public support, you lose the whole works. So let's all be careful here. I'm really optimistic. I'm really happy. I'm really looking forward to seeing Canadians continue to stand up for themselves as they have been. And we're going to report on it as much as possible, with as much clarity as possible, as we can, with people on the ground, and as people let us know what's going on. So just before I go, there's Nico. He's shown my Twitter handle, Cory B. Morgan, at Cory B. Morgan. That's really where you get your best chances of interacting with the old crab. That's where I tend to respond a lot. I have a good time there. You can email me, cmorgan@westernstandardonline.com. That's, if you got guest ideas, you got critique, you got to give me a thumbs up, you want to tell me to kiss your ass, that's all fine. That's where you can send that. And again, make sure to take out a membership, westernstandardonline.com/membership, and then you can get the full stories as they're written. And again, we're a real newsroom. We don't just cut and paste press releases like some of the alternative media sources do. That's why Dave and Mel and Amber and the rest are always so busy. Eva, they're on the phone all the time in there because they check the sources, they talk to people. We look into the news and we really actually report on it. So yes, disappear. I do answer that chat sometimes, but often I've got guests on and I can only hit so many of the comments. But I do appreciate them. I do see them, and I will speak to them, as often as the show allows. So before I go for the weekend, guys, on Monday, who have I got coming? I got a couple of good ones as usual. Where are we? Get down in that darn teleprompter and my vacuous memory myself. Where are we? I got Franco Terrazzano, of course, of the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, because we got some federal dollar and cents numbers to talk about. And then Lionel Cambates of Delta Clean Tech, because we're going to talk about carbon technology. Because people act as if it's impossible to do oil and gas development without controlling carbon emissions, and that is just not true at all. Pat Andrusiak saying he loves Art Pawlowski. He brought a lot to getting people to care about what corrupt governments are doing. Open some eyes. See, yeah, some people like Art, some don't. I'm not a fan of his, but I don't begrudge other people who are. I do worry about him throwing gas on some fires now and then. So again, subscribe on YouTube, subscribe on Facebook, Rumble, whatever way you're watching, because as James was saying, if anything breaks, if anything new is coming up, him or Mel or me are going to pop up there all of a sudden. We're going to have live coverage of it, and this is where you're going to see it. So thanks for tuning in. And I'm going to leave you from one more message from our sponsors before we finish there. Algodex, those guys are into digital currency and a new way of doing things. Thank you all. I will see you on Monday.
Algodex is owned by Algodex. This is great new technology just coming online now in the digital currency world. Algodex is a great way for you to use the digital currency Algorand in your day-to-day transactions. Can you imagine a world where we don't have to buy a cup of coffee using the federal dollar? And you don't even have to use the American federal dollar. You don't have to use the euro or the pound sterling. You can use real money, digital currencies that are not at the beck and call of governments and inflation. The Algodex is making digital currencies usable on a day-to-day basis.